If you don't know how to aggregate data in Power BI, you will after this video. Today we're going to be covering how to aggregate data with DAX with a sum, average, count, min, and max function. Welcome back to our video series on Power BI Basics, where we're teaching you how to use Power BI from the ground up. If you're interested in learning more about Power BI, please take a second and hit the subscribe button. I'm releasing short, easy to follow tutorials daily. So, in order to calculate sum, average, count, min, and max, we're going to need to create some measures. So first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create those measures. So first, I'm going to create sum of total sales. And create using the sum is pretty easy. First, I type sum, then I select the column I want to sum. And if I go ahead and click OK, it will actually create that measure. So, if I now bring over location ID, and if I change this so it doesn't aggregate here, so I say don't summarize, I'm going to go ahead and delete this table right here. I'll now have every single location ID, and then I can bring over my measure. Now, I can also go ahead and let's just say I wanted to do the average. I could create new measure, and I could go average of total sales. And I could go in here and I could type average. And then I could go average total sales. And just like that, it'll create a new measure right here called average. And I'll now have an average of total sales. And you might guess it, but I can do the same for count, min, and max. So let's do that quickly. So I'm just going to copy this function, and then I'm going to go new measure. I'm going to replace here, and I'm going to go count of total sales. I'm going to go count here. Going to change this to count. Okay, there we go. I'm then going to go ahead and I'm going to drag that into here. Now we've got count, and then I'm going to take one more. I'm going to go, or two more. I'm going to create the min and then the max. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go new measure. I'm going to paste this in. I'm going to go min, and then I'm going to go min here. Just like that. And then I'm going to click OK. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create max. Now, as you can see, creating these is really pretty easy. But what happens if you want to take the min or the max of an expression? So one thing you might notice is that in this data set right now, not only do I have the actual total sales amount, I also have a column called tax amount. So what if I wanted to find our revenue, which is essentially our total sale dollar value minus our tax amount? Now, in order to do that, I'd have to write an expression and then sum that expression. So I'd want Power BI to first calculate that expression, then actually do the aggregation. And Power BI has a function for that. It's equally as straightforward, but that's the X functions. So if I type sum X in here and then give it the table name and then give it the expression, in this case I want it to be total sales. So right here, total sales minus sales data tax amount. And this will be in here somewhere. I can now, what it'll do is it'll first go total sale minus the tax amount, then it'll calculate the sum. And I can go ahead and I can call this sum of total sale minus tax. And now when I go ahead and I bring this into this visual, right in here, you'll now see that I'm now getting slightly different values because I'm going ahead and I'm removing that tax amount. So, all right, in order to kind of show you one more of these, what we're going to do is we're going to find the average difference of total sales minus the average total sale. So in order to do that, I can use the average X function. So I can go average. I can go average X. I can give it the table name, which is sales data headers. And then I can go sum of total sales right, minus the average of total sales. And one thing you'll notice here is that the measures are just here in these square brackets. And I can title this total sales minus average right here. And I can go ahead and I can click OK. And what I'll now be calculating is the average of the total sales. Oh, and I'm getting a bunch of zeros here. So now let's explore why we're getting zeros. And the answer is surprisingly simple. It's because when we're doing this average X, it's calculating at the actual individual rows of the table. So this sum here, right, when we're showing a sum here, this is calculating the sum of the location ID, and then this is calculating the average of that location ID. But when we put it in the average X, we're actually calculating it at the individual levels of the table. So what does that mean? Well, I've got an example here for you. So for product ID 44 and 37, and location ID 37 and salesperson ID 12, you'll see that we have two rows of total sale at 1890. So if I go and I filter back down this visual, so if I filter it back down, and we'll go product ID 44, so, or let's go location ID, just because I have that in, and it's location ID 37. So I'll go location ID, and I'll go basic filtering here, and then I'll go 37. And I look at this. What you'll be able to see is that I now actually have a difference here instead of zeros. And if I go in and I start bringing in product ID, so I'll bring in product ID here, and we'll see if we can get it to tie out. So I now go product ID, and I change this to don't summarize. And then now I go to product ID, and it's product ID 44. You'll see here, okay, we're now at 90, and we'll see if we can get it to tie. And then let's go back in here. It'll be salesperson ID 36. So we'll now pull over salesperson ID into here, and we'll go salesperson ID, basic filtering 36. I want to show you guys this. Okay, so now we're down to, and I don't think I quite, I applied that's why. This needs to go down here, and this now needs to go here in basic filtering, and this now needs to be 44. And we now scroll over. You'll now see here it's total sales minus average, and that's because the sum of those two rows is 37,781. The average of the sales is 1890, and so it's subtracting here and here to then get the total sales minus average. So this is a really common error that you need to be aware of when you're using those X functions, and that's that it's evaluating them at the actual context of the data itself and not in the context of the visual. And that's something that people often find tricky. So that's been a quick overview on how to aggregate data. So you now know, to summarize, you now know how to use the sum function, the average function, the count function, the min function, and the max function. And then you also now know how to use their X counterparts, which allows you to calculate these aggregate functions with expressions. If you're interested in learning more about Power BI, please subscribe. We're releasing a new video tutorial on Power BI every single day, and we'd be happy to have you along for the journey.